Hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy, for nerds, by nerds, hanging with these nerds.
Ted.
Hey.
And today, we're going to be doing a video on behind the GM screen, another Game Master tips.
If you want to jump down the description below, you can sign up for Nerdarchy, the newsletter. It's a great way to get gaming tips, as well as learn how to game with Nerdarchy.
So one day, I'm just chilling at home on my computer, minding my own business, and I get messages on Facebook through the Nerdarchy page. And, you know, one of the fans, they had a question, they wanted help with something. They're like, oh my god, Nerdarchy, how do I create new spells for a Necromancer that I want to pit against my my players?
Well, when it comes to creating new spells, you kind of have to ask yourself, you know, is this something that you want to have available in the game, or is this something that you just want your bad guy to have in his ability?
Yeah, I was just going to bring that up because, well, does he have a spell book if he's a wizard necromancer, and can they get it? If they can't get it, is it? Yes.
No, I'm just saying, yes, that's a good point.
Yeah, so if they can get it, you got to write something up because there's someone that's going to want it. There's someone's going to be like, that thing was awesome, I want to be able to do that, or that's going to be worth something to some wizard somewhere.
Does it have to be a spell? So this is where the conversation kind of went to. I was like, well, what are you trying to do? And you could just take the effects that you want and model them after other abilities that are in the monster manual that other monsters have, and, you know, make it necromancy per se. Like if you look at the mage write-up and the archmage, I don't know if both of them are just the archmage, but one of them has spell resistance. It doesn't tell you why. He just has it. You know, like he's an archmage.
Yeah, they don't say where he got it from.
Yeah. So he's like, you know, I want the necromancer to swing a sword and D4, you know, skeletons appear after that happens, and I want him to be able to point at skeletons and they explode and do damage to my players. And I'm like, that, you know, first of all, I was like, wow, this actually sounds like a really cool encounter, but
yeah.
I think you're thinking about it way too hard, dude. Because
before you go any further, the point that this guy clearly doesn't have is he's the one behind the DM screen. When you want something to happen, make it happen.
It's nice to have some kind of rules or logic to follow for it, but in the end, is it going to look cool? Is it going to make a good story? And will the players have fun with it? You know,
is it? And you know, I would throw in there: is it too much or is it balanced? I mean, you want to look at that as well. Oh, I want to just wave my hand and have the characters fall over dead. Well, that's a bit too much.
No, that would also break one of the rules of, you know, it's not fun anymore.
Yeah,
but
sure.
yeah, specifically with this, you know, you could have, you know, Scourge of Bones. You just call it something. He could even say it like an anime character if you wanted to. And, you know, that could be
for
the
like
spell
3
component.
rounds.
Yeah. And, you know, bam, he swings his sword, hits somebody, and then skeletons, you know, come out of the ground.
You know, my advice was, like, you want basically him to do something and then add skeletons to the fight. Well, just add skeletons to the fight. Like, it doesn't, like, thematically, it's cool, but it doesn't have to be an ability per se. You're just adding more monsters to the fight. It doesn't have to be a summoning ability per se. It's just, like, X happens in the encounter, then this causes Y to transpire because.
And they could even be his skeletons that he summoned previously and had just planted in some leaf debris or something, ready to go.
Yeah,
you know,
like,
if he's the plotting kind of.
Well, see, and that's kind of like the thing. Like, it doesn't matter how you want to do it. Like, you can explain it or you can't. Like, you could literally be like, yeah, like, basically these little bone shards fly off his sword as he swings it, and boom, X amount of skeletons show up whenever that happens.
And they just assemble right there in front of you.
Just think about it, right? You enter a room, and there's some kind of trigger that's going to happen. Doesn't matter what. Basically, okay, you enter a room with a bunch of statues, like, in the wall, like frieze, is that what that's called? Like this when it's carved and sculpted and stuff.
Freezes or
yeah,
something.
and maybe say they're all demon faces, right? And the players enter the room, and the mouths all drop open, and it vomits out a monster, right? Now, did you really need? You don't need a component for that. It doesn't have to be a trap. It's just, okay, it's something visually that happens, and then a monster appears. It's just how you happen to add them. Like, who hasn't done, as a DM, done the thing where the players do something, enter a room, whatever, and then the monster appears?
Right.
You know, for whatever reason, whether it's summoned. Like, literally, if it's summoned, like, I don't think as a GM you think really hard about the specifics of the spell or a specific spell. It's just, that's the effect that happened and brought it into being. Well, when you're doing an encounter like this, GM won it, it's the same exact thing.
There is nothing mechanically different from him swinging his sword, even if it's part of an attack, of these skeletons just appearing as part of it, or if every time he attacks, 3 skeletons come into the room from the doorway behind.
Exactly.
There's nothing mechanically different. You as the GM, you're sitting there behind that screen, you want to add more skeletons to the fight. Typically, if you're fighting skeletons, they're probably going to be pushovers anyway, and it's just something for your fighters to mow through, or your cleric to turn, or your mage to fireball and clear the room. No big deal.
Well, he did add something he wanted to do that was really cool, and that was he wanted to have the Necromancer be able to basically explode the skeletons and do damage to the party.
That's awesome.
That sounds just like a fireball that doesn't have a line,
Yeah, and and if you want him to be able to do multiple things at the same time, you could, 5th edition has lair actions and legendary actions, and you could kind of just tailor and make it something similar to that.
Yeah. And that that's a great point. Lair actions happen typically at a certain point, but a legendary action happens anytime after a player goes.
Yes, some kind of necromancer sanctum action.
If you've got this guy, it's like, all right, the player just attacked, and he wants to get retribution. He can explode some skeletons right in their face. Awesome.
And it also sets up, and kudos to this GM, because it sets up an interesting dynamic where, the skeletons, you actually have to kind of ignore them and get rid of the Necromancer, because he's just going to keep bringing more skeletons in and keep blowing them up on you. Which is awesome. I mean...
But you got get rid of the skeletons so that they don't blow up in your face.
It's a vicious cycle.
Yeah.
Oh no!
And so if you can make a dynamic where it's like the players are trying to solve a problem because they can't have more and more skeletons show up, but they have to kill the Necromancer, but they also have to kill the skeletons before they kill them. But then you also have this third dynamic of he can blow up skeletons to harm you.
Yes.
So it's like they start to try and develop some kind of how do we defeat this Nintendo boss? That kind of figuring out a pattern of a villain that's powerful is part of the fun of an encounter.
What if the players disarm him, right? Maybe that was part of the components that he needed. It could be another way to solve a problem, and add some more diversity to the encounter. If your players are being sharp and thinking, well, what can I do? Right. So, essentially, what this all boiled down to when the conversation was over, I was just like, stop thinking so hard. Figure out what you want it to look like, and your players are going to interact with your narrative, not so much the mechanics and stats you've written down. That's what they're going to go by. They in theory never see that stuff.
At the end of the day, unless you have a player who has studied the monster manual, they know everything that's in there, and you're using a monster directly out of that book, the players are not going to be aware of what you have in front of you, because you can put a troll encounter out there, but is it a troll that's right out of the monster manual, or is it a troll that's had some kind of training, has better gear, has some kind of special ability? They don't know. So at the end of the day, only you as the DM know exactly what your critters and monsters can do, and make it be fun, make it interesting. Don't, as Dave says, don't overthink it.
And as a quick thing, if you don't think, that was really a spell or a special ability that the people can actually gain, well, you kind of can get back to them later and be like, hey, I gotta review this and kind of think about it. Exploding skeleton spell. Well, it sounds cool, like maybe it does fireball damage. Well, if you make it one level higher, or maybe say it requires a skeleton, so if you don't, you'd have to memorize fireball and this other spell if you wanted to use both of them at some time. So you can get into the crunch later if it seems appropriate. Like he does have a spell book, and you're like, oh crap, I forgot.
Yeah, or he does have a spell book, and maybe there's some notes on it. But one of the things about spells, it's not like you can just take a spell and transcribe it. The whole theory is the wizard is going to rewrite the spell in his own shorthand. So, one, it would take a little bit of time. And if it's a new discovery, like this spell doesn't exist anywhere, You could definitely use the delaying action if you wanted to make it as part of the treasure, the reward, whether you can get the special spell, or perhaps it isn't written down in that particular spell book, but he still had access to it.
Yeah.
So like the wizard now can seek it out, and it could be another part of the game.
Yeah, it could be lost lore. A demon could have imprinted in his head. It could just be a spell-like ability he has now from his own adventures.
Right, and at the end of the day, like the players will probably never know. So as the GM, you don't have to put any extra brain power towards it unless you really want to.
So, what do you guys out there? What kind of issues and stuff do you have? Being behind the screen, or what kind of cool stories or things have you made? Put your comments down below. While you're at it, like, share, even subscribe.
So check out the articles over at nerdarchy.com.
While you're there, you can check out Nerdarchy, the store.
So until next time, stay nerdy.